Hello, hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, all of you, and thank you for joining our webinar. Hello, Professor Berta Ramos, Christian, Edgar, Erika, Professor Ney, Heidi, Jose Luis, Laura, Lisette, Nancy, and Ronald. Welcome to our webinar of September. It's a great honor to have you here on this event, on this important day. And as some of you know, well, my name is Felipe Mica, and I am the Vice President of Asocopi, and today I'll be, leading a little bit and guiding the session with our special guest, Professor Carmen Helena Guerrero-Nieto. So welcome everybody. Feel free to, share the link, share it with your students, with classmates, if it is the case, with your colleagues, and we are just going to start. As you know, this session is being recorded right now, as we will be uploading it to our YouTube channel later. And welcome everyone. So just to start, a quick reminder, okay, so this is the Colombian Association of English Language Teachers. We cultivate, support, and treasure the ELT profession in Colombia since 1965. And we are getting super, super close to our celebration of our 60th anniversary next week in Santa Marta, in the Universidad del Magdalena. Besides that, just for you to remember, okay, we have our national and international conference every year. We also have different teacher training programs like webinars, workshops, diploma courses, and many more. We do have our special interest groups. You will find all the info available online, and there is our How Journal, which has recently released a special issue on the history of our association and some super, super interesting insights from colleagues. So welcome, everybody. Welcome, Professor Yolanda. And Eric, I think I said hello already. And well, Lisette, Najibe, and all the ones who are joining our session today. Okay. There is this event next week, okay, October 2nd to the 4th. There are some special activities going on. We have sent to your email invites concerning, the launch of the journal, also a dinner we would have, a closing, a special party, and of course, all the details concerning the program of this annual conference. We are super excited to be there and to meet you all in person. As always, this is just this super quick video. Let's take a look at it.
Welcome to Universidad Magdalena. This year we're celebrating our 60th anniversary. Come join us next October the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th. We can't wait to meet you all here in Santa Marta.
Remember that as a copy, it's you, me, and all of us.
Come to celebrate with us.
Okay, there we go. So this is the video released by our president, Jonathan Vasquez, and by Miriam Vera. And these are our plenary speakers. All of them are confirmed. Okay, and they are going to be there sharing with us meaningful insights on the teaching profession and also on the particularities and current discussions concerning our field. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Professor Carmen Helena Guerrero-Nieto. I am sure that all of us know her very well because we have been either her students or because we have read her work or we have seen her in conferences. So I think Professor Carmen Helena Guerrero does not need, more than a kind welcome. Thank you so much for being part of our association. You have been supporting it, being also working hard for the field, for the profession, and just, to make the official presentation, as you could read there on the screen. She has a doctoral degree in second language acquisition and teaching, and also master in second language acquisition from the Universidad de Arizona. She holds a master degree in Lingüística Aplicada a la Enseñanza del Inglés from our local university, Universidad Distrital Francisco José de Caldas. She's part of the research group Estupoli, and she has been a teacher at the Universidad Distrital at both the undergraduate and the graduate level. And she has, published several articles, chapters of books, and delivered conferences concerning our field. So thank you once again, Professor Carmen Helena, for being here. I'm honored and humbled with introducing you to, our audience, and well, we all, or ear. So let's get started with your presentation.
Okay, thank you so much, Felipe, for your kind introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining this talk. Let me share my screen or window. Let's see. Give me a sec. Felipe, can you? Yes. Now, can you tell me if you can see my screen?
Yes, it's there.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you very much again, Felipe, for your kind invitation. Thank you to the board of directors and of course to Median, the office manager, also for all this effort that you guys make to conduct all these webinars and bring us together. I titled my presentation "Teaching English as an Act of Healing and Hope." And before we move on, I would like to make a disclaimer. Because when I was given the title to my talk, I didn't want it to be too long. So what you're not going to hear in this presentation is anything like related to specifically about teaching English or giving you teaching tips. That's what this is not about. I'm sorry if the title was misleading, but what you're going to listen, what you're going to get is me talking about the field of ELT, of English language teaching. And I am going to share some research studies that have led me and my co-researchers to heal and to have hope. So having said that, I would like to, well, restate again a little bit about my locus of enunciation. I am an English teacher. I graduated as a licenciada en Lenguas Modernas from Universidad Pedagógica y Tecnológica de Colombia in Tunja. That's my alma mater. Then I became a university professor. I am still a university professor. I am also a bilingual person, although it took me quite a long time to acknowledge that I was a bilingual person. That's a different story that I might tell you some other time. I am also a teacher educator. I have been a teacher educator for like the past 20 years or something. And also I am a researcher, teacher researcher, and also I teach research. And all these things, all these identities and all these places of my locus of enunciation have been nurtured and informed and enriched by critical theories and later by the decolonial stance. So I have been transiting from being critical to being decolonial and examining the issue of decoloniality in ELT. But before I go any further, I would like just to mention very quickly these 2 points, which I think are important in understanding why I say that I am coming from the critical transit into the decolonial, because in some other places where I have said that, I remember a colleague of mine from not from ELT, but some another field, he said like, but that's the same. And I was like, it's not the same. So I think there is this convergence between critical theory and the decolonial turn in terms of the issue they want to problematize. And is that both critical theories and decolonial turns intend to problematize and unveil capitalist power structures. I think that's where they converge. But also I find some divergences, and I think to me, the most important ones are the yes. Should I
There was a mic open. Yeah, you can continue.
okay. The differences I find, well, they diverge. Critical theory and decolonial turn to me is that in critical theory, their main interest is to emancipate from capitalist oppression. While in the decolonial turn, it is important to acknowledge that there is this mutation, let's say, of colonialism into coloniality, and that we are in this coloniality stage, which is, of course, largely formed by the capitalist system, which in turn is also based on racism. So it's not only that we need to emancipate from capitalist oppression, like the critical theory would state, but also acknowledge that this capitalist system is based on coloniality and is articulated with that. And we need to be aware that beyond that, beyond fighting the capitalist system, we need to acknowledge the coloniality in which we, the former colonies and the peripheries and the so-called third world countries, are in relation to the so-called developed countries. And the other aspect in which I think these two differ is that critical theory emerges mainly from in Europe and is a response to European problems, with all these class struggles and workers and proletariat and their struggles with the owners of the means of production, which is of course very valid because those were their problems at the time. But the decolonial turn emerges not necessarily like in Latin America geographically, but it is thought by Latin American scholars. Something that we need to acknowledge is that this was possible because they were educated in the United States. But anyhow, the authors that come with this theory are Latin American scholars, and they are concerned about our Latin American problems, our Latin American population, because while in critical theory there was no mention of indigenous peoples, because of course that was not of their interest, the colonial turn takes issue on the situation of indigenous peoples, enslaved peoples also, and of course this triad of the coloniality of knowing, being, and power. So I think these are the major differences, or at least some of the major differences between critical theory and the decolonial turn. So that's what I wanted to clear out of the way before we continue, explaining why I say that I am transiting or coming and going from these two. And in preparation for what I'm going to say next, I would like to mention the critical role that ASOCOPI, the association, as an association, has played in reshaping the field of ELT in Colombia. In a study that Álvaro Quintero and myself conducted about ASOCOPI, we used as data all the programs that were produced from 1965 to I think it was 2010 or something. And before 2004, and I guess you all remember what happened in 2004. If you don't, it was when this Colombia bilingual policy was launched. Before that, well, we could see in the agenda of ASOCOPI was this very hegemonic imposition this colonial ideology, and most of the directors were either members of the British Council or teachers who aligned with the principles of the British Council. So that was before 2004. After 2004, there was this huge shaking up of the field after the launching of this policy, because many Colombian scholars felt that it was an unfair policy. So with this shaking up, the board of directors began to be to include were elected actually more Colombian teachers who had critical perspectives. And then from the moment on, we could see how the agendas of the conference started to change, to deviate, let's say, from the canon, from the ideological north and the hegemonic of, let's say, imperialist English. And there was room for the inclusion of many critical themes. So there was a conference about English and symbolic power. We had also teachers' narratives, and some of you might remember we had this beautiful concept conference about peace building. We have been talking about diversity, coloniality, so many other things, which of course show how we have descend from these hegemonic agendas, which put us in a very different light in relation to other TESOL associations. We are very disruptive. And we have these ruptures, which are ideological, not only ideological, but also economic and political. But this has given us the opportunity to claim the field, let's say. So after 2004, and with all what was happening in the country with this Colombia bilingual policy, there was this explosion of tons of research studies that were not addressing or not complying or not obeying the rules of what research should be, but we're criticizing, we're problematizing the policy, we're exploring so many issues around this. There were more publications, there were more journals, more book chapters, more books that included all these issues. Of course, there were new trends in research. There were lots of conferences, tons of conferences around the country. And also, there was the emergence of new graduate programs, many graduate programs also around the country. Before, there was only the Masters in Applied Linguistics to the Teaching of English that was at Universidad Distrital, and I think the next one was at the UPTC. But then there were way more graduate programs. So what this showed is that we were in charge of our own research and of our own teaching agendas. And I think that is something that we need to be very, very proud that we have reached this point, that there were many scholars who were brave enough to challenge hegemonic ideologies and give voice to the ELT community, the Colombian ELT community. So why do I say that teaching English, so the ELT field, is or should be an act of healing and love? And again, when I say teaching English, it was for the purpose of the title, but I mean not only teaching English, but also in general, what we are doing in the English language teaching field in Colombia. And I think a lot of what we're doing or we have done has been an act of healing, um, and hope. I put love of hope and love. Um, so I say this because for too long we were stripped of our nature as educators. We were reduced to the mere act of teaching a foreign, distant language. And sadly, I have to admit that this is not something that we overcame, but with the articulation of capitalism, neoliberalism, and the teaching of English, this stripping of our nature is stronger by the day. Um, we just need to see the role or the characteristics of the jobs of English teachers in many institutions, and it's really sad to see how all the potential we have has been reduced to deliver a content. And also, we were taught from the very beginning of the field that this is a foreign language. And to me, that foreign is very problematic because it's like, oh, this language doesn't belong to you. This is something we lend to you, but you cannot own this language. And that is something that I constantly claim and invite others to claim. I live in this language my life every single day. And this is the language, English is the language that has given me a career and also has given me voice and the possibility to express my ideological and political positions. So, how can this be a foreign language to me? It's my other language. Um, but these discourses are very, very strong to convince us that this is not our language. So I think this is our language, and I invite everybody else who live their lives in this language to claim ownership over this language. We have been also actively marginalized and silenced for many, many years. We have been denied the space to express our critical identities in order to uphold the false notion of English as a neutral language. And the way that this has been happening, there are many ways in which this is very explicit, but also there are other subtle ways, like los derechos básicos de aprendizaje, por ejemplo, eh, los estándares, los guidelines. Todas estas han sido formas en que los ideólogos hegemónicos han tratado de marginarnos y silenciarlos, ¿no? So, in English language teaching, social, political, cultural issues were not considered of interest for the English teacher. Our role was like, oh, you have to teach the language and that's it. But we were left out of the possibility of participating in the debates of what was going on in our country. So I think it's time for us, the time came for us to claim that other part of our nature as educators, which is this political engagement, this political identity. But luckily, as we have seen, these 2 points, the one that is strip of our nature as educators and this marginalization, I don't think that is over. And as I said before, I think this is getting stronger and stronger by the day. But also, I think that today there are more teachers, English teachers, researchers that are expressing their resistance in many, many ways. And it's not only, let's say, at the level of research, but also in many Colombian schools, teachers are doing lots of wonderful things to resist the hegemonic impositions, to resist the imposed curriculum, the imposed topics that we need to talk about. And that is very heroic, I think. So we have in Colombia, teachers and researchers embrace our profession from a situated angle. And we are bringing all this, the diversity of topics, even teaching methods, and of course, um, researching, which I think is very brave. And I have this picture that I took, I think, I don't remember, it was last year or the year before, in the conference, during the conference, as a copy conference, because, guys, like probably 15, 20 years ago, this was impossible. And today is not impossible. It's almost like expected to have this type of conversations in our conference in Asocopi. So that's why I brought this picture to illustrate this point of resistance. And of course, this is just only one, but there are so many others. So after this, Felipe, tú me vas diciendo cómo voy de tiempo.
Okay, you still have like 15 minutes left.
Okay. So I would like to share with you some of the most recent studies in which I've been involved, that have allowed me and my colleagues to heal as researchers and as educators, English language teacher educators. So I have these four studies that I would like to talk about. I hope I have enough time to do so. Something very interesting of these studies is that I didn't choose them because they were using collaborative autoethnography. I chose them because I felt that these studies help us heal. But it was like a happy coincidence that in three of them, we were using autoethnography. And for this, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to Dr. Jairo Castañeda Trujillo, who brought this research approach to our research group and also to the doctor program, and was a very, very marvelous discovery, because autoethnography, it has this power really of, bringing these wounds, but also helping us heal. So these are the four studies I want to share with you. Now I'm gonna mention each one by one. So the first one is Walking Toward the Demonumentalization of Qualitative Research, a collaborative autoethnography account while producing an educational podcast. This has been already published, and it was written by me and my colleague Álvaro Quintero. But in the original study, there was also the participation of Jairo Castañeda, John Lozada, and Erika Gonzalez. And we did produce a podcast, bilingual podcast, about qualitative research. Of course, you are very invited to listen to the podcast. I think it has 5 episodes. But I'm not going to talk about the study per se, just these 2 elements that there were me and Alvaro talking for the paper. The podcast is something different, but for the paper, me and Alvaro were writing these collaborative autoethnographies in which we were questioning this positivist and instrumentalist research culture in ELT. We were educated under this paradigm. So the study in general was looking at that. And well, to heal, we need to identify our wounds. So our wounds, some of the wounds that me and Alvaro spot, was that we felt very awkward as academics and as researchers when we tried to deviate from the norm, because we were taught in this paradigm, in the paradigm in which we Colombians were followers of what researchers in Great Britain and in the United States were doing. From us, the only expectation was you follow what the North states, you replicate their studies. And many of us did that, trying to replicate, studies like the ones conducted by Diane Friedman, we're in a very complete different context from ours, but that was what was expected from us, and we didn't have the chance to talk back or criticize. We had to be docile, like, okay, yes, obedient. So that was like the wounds that by talking we identify. And then how I feel that we were healing is when we found our voices. But more important than that, we found that our voices matter, that we had been researchers for so many years, and that what we were doing made sense, even if they were far away from the mainstream agendas, but they mean something to the people who we care about. So that was the healing. And the hope that we find that I can spot from this study is that our students, the students that we teach in the master's programs, in the undergraduate programs, in the doctor programs, they also find their own voices as researchers, and that we can disrupt the canon of doing research the North way, and understand that doing research in the South is so different. There are so many other things that they didn't take into account. So something very important that I think I'm going to be pointing out during the rest of the presentation is that when we talk and then because autoethnography is also like a confessional uh, style. And sometimes we are very like shy to share our insecurities, our fears. But then when you write them, and then your partner writes it, and then you talk about that, and you feel like, oh, we both felt the same way. That is very encouraging, because it's not that you're crazy, that you're the only person that is experiencing this, but the healing comes after this conversation and after finding that we are having the same insecurities and the same pain. And I would like to share with you this quote that I took from the article that is already published. And this is my own voice. I am not using in any of the other examples the voices of my partners, because I don't know if they feel comfortable with that. But all these are published or in press. So here, what I say is what makes research situated is that it responds to the interests and social and cultural dynamics of those who are taking part in that research, precisely because our knowledge sometimes does not fit into something that is supposed to be academic, disciplinary, canonical knowledge, whatever you want to call it. We self-impose this challenge, but it's not an obligation to make it fit. I believe that the obligation should rather be to find more and more meaning to what for us is really knowledge, and and that is where the essence of doing situated research would lie. And that is much more difficult than following the recipe of manuals or making it fit into established patterns. I'm not going to comment on this, because then I won't have to tell you these other research studies. This one is called Becoming Dissertation Advisors from a Decolonial Stance, Coming to Terms with Our Contradictions, a collective autoethnography. Ay, fue mi chica, I'm sorry que haya cometido una locura, pero bueno, perdón. This is a collective autoethnography that we conducted with Pilar Méndez and Harold Castañeda. And the study was about reconstructing our journey as dissertation advisors The three of us wrote these autoethnographic accounts, and then we got together, each one of us read them aloud, and then we hold conversation around the topics that were emerging. And the ones that I could spot in some of us was the toxic work environment. And the healing comes when we were able to share our pain, our insecurities, this work displacement that we had to experience within the same university. Two of us had to leave the original program and then go and look for asylum somewhere else in the university. But when we were sharing all these painful experiences, that helped us the possibility to stay together and keep resisting. And the hope that I see here is the value of communal work. Communal projects help us to be stronger. And you know, in the neoliberalism has broken these communal projects. But what I find very positive is that um, we can work together. And actually, all the four projects I am sharing today are projects that were having conducted with other people, which I think is very relevant. And this is a quote from my own, again, I chose my own quote because I don't know, I don't feel very comfortable sharing other people's quotes. But again, this is going to be published. So this is the draft that is going to be published. We were talking about escaping this toxic environment I was talking about. So I say my escape, which coincides with Harold's escape in many aspects, you know which ones. Men curtailing my career, that is mutilating me. Up to this point, I had being that person who had been building a career for years but had to start from scratch somewhere else. And from that moment until today, I have been those two people in a way, almost schizophrenic, because on the one hand, I am a person with recognition, with a career, with a whole construction. And on the other hand, I feel that I am nobody. I mean, I am the head of a graduate program, yes, but my cultural capital, my linguistic capital, my social capital does not reside there. So I always feel like I'm neither from here nor from there because of that escape. And also for me, it meant a very strong physical issue of illness. Ay, ¿cuánto tiempo tengo, Felipe?
5 minutes.
Ay, no puede ser. Okay, very quickly, a collaborative autoethnography of turning ourselves inside out, showing our aches and pains, but also gains of being ELT educators. I conducted this study with Jairo Castañeda, Jose Largo, and myself. So what we did is the three of us exploring how we navigate from the epistemological north to the epistemological south. And what we did exactly the same, writing the ethnographies and then holding these conversations. The ones that we could, like our common ones, was this being schooled in canonical imperialist views of language, teaching and researcher, all these neoliberal agendas, but especially we feeling guilty because at some point in our careers we were also perpetuating these ideologies, hegemonic ideologies. And the healing comes when we realize that we have been able to overcome these agendas, these hegemonic agendas, and now we are experiencing a different kind of pain and ache, which had to do with the frustration of seeing how this country is falling apart, how our society is falling apart, and the daily struggles to make ELT count and making it relevant. But we are still in the struggle, and we feel that it is important to be able to care, that still we care. And although that hurts, for us is important. And we we hope that as we found inspiration in each other scholars will find inspiration, but also become inspiring for their students and for their colleagues. So this is the way, the hope I can spot in this research. I think I'm going to skip this because I really want to come to this one. This is the latest project in which I have been taking part. Se llama Creación de una obra artística de literatura electrónica hacia la politización de la enseñanza del inglés. Y aquí estamos participando 3 grupos de investigación. Está liderando el grupo Estupoli bajo la dirección para este proyecto de Yolanda Zamacá, con el grupo Estudios del Discurso y el grupo Educación, Comunicación y Cultura, todos de la Universidad Distrital Francisco José de Caldas. El objetivo de este estudio es producir una obra, esto es una investigación, creación, producir una obra de literatura electrónica para enseñar inglés con base en los documentos de la Comisión de la Verdad. Y aquí también quisiera dar un agradecimiento muy especial a Camila Duarte y a Melissa Cobo, porque ellas estuvieron al frente de la escritura del proyecto inicial para participar en una convocatoria en la Universidad Distrital y recibir unos recursos que nos permiten hacer esta obra de literatura electrónica. Nuestras heridas, muchas, todas las injusticias, la violencia, la marginalidad, la discriminación, el clasismo, el racismo, la muerte, el odio que ha construido, que está constituyendo gran parte de nuestra historia moderna y nuestra identidad como nación. Y por supuesto, el silencio y no me acuerdo cómo se dice, helplessness that we English teachers or ELT educators have experienced in front of this wounded, broken country with this broken heart. Ha sido muy doloroso para nosotros trabajando todos estos materiales de la Comisión de la Verdad, darnos como cuenta de esa inmensa herida, ¿no? Que nos ha atravesado y que todavía nos atraviesa. Y pues healing, la verdad, todavía yet to come, porque aún estamos en todo este proceso de descubrir las heridas y del dolor. La esperanza es la posibilidad de hacer este estudio, pero también ¿cómo decirlo? El privilegio que tenemos nosotros todavía hoy en la universidad pública de investigar sobre lo que nos gusta y nos interesa y tiene sentido para nosotros. Afortunadamente todavía no hemos llegado al punto en que el conocimiento que se produce o se quiere producir sea cortado por políticas o por ideologías, ¿no? Entonces, pues creo que esa también es nuestra esperanza, y nuestra esperanza es poder contribuir a sanar también un poquito esta sociedad tan rota en la que estamos viviendo. Y ya para cerrar, yo quisiera traer estas cifras y estos datos. En Colombia, la cifra oficial de desaparecidos por la violencia es de 121.768 personas, que es casi la totalidad de la población de una ciudad como Tunja. En la dictadura en Argentina fueron 30.000, y fíjense la diferencia entre la visibilidad que se le ha dado a todos los desaparecidos en Argentina y los desaparecidos en Colombia, que son 4 veces los de Argentina. Entonces, a mí me parece que es muy importante que tengamos estas cifras y que estudiemos estos materiales que antes de empezar la charla hablábamos con Felipe, que son materiales bellamente producidos, dolorosamente, pero bellamente. También las cifras de los maestros que han sido víctimas del conflicto armado son 1.579 maestros asesinados, y como lo dice Daniel Oliveira, profesor de la UNAR, detrás de cada cifra hay una vida, unos sueños, un trabajo con la comunidad arduo y dedicado. En el 2016, cuando se hizo el plebiscito por la paz, Colombia votó no a la paz. Tristemente, las grandes ciudades donde el conflicto no se vive, donde uno no sabe lo que es salir a la medianoche corriendo porque lo van a matar, pues votamos no. Y los lugares donde el conflicto se ha vivido con mucha más terror, fueron los que votaron sí. Entonces, estas son cosas que nos ponen a pensar, ¿no? Traje también esta foto, que el privilegio no te nuble la empatía, que se hizo muy famoso en el estallido social, y lo quise traer porque nosotros, los profesores de inglés, tenemos un lugar de privilegio muy grande en la sociedad, y creo que debemos usar ese privilegio para no olvidar de dónde venimos, ¿no? No olvidar que muchos de nosotros venimos de estratos 1, 2, máximo 3, pero a veces se nos olvida. Entonces, me gustaría que siempre tengamos presente esto eh, en nuestro desempeño. Y luego estas otras cifras sobre quiénes son los responsables de la violencia en Colombia. El 52% estas son cifras de la Comisión de la Verdad, los paramilitares, aun cuando a nosotros por muchos años nos han metido el cuento que son las FARC. Las FARC tienen una gran responsabilidad, pero no tanto como los paramilitares. También las FARC 24%, múltiples agentes 9%, los agentes estatales, tristemente, 8%, o sea, los que nos deberían cuidar también son responsables. El ELN, 3% y otros grupos, 3%. Yo no sé si, Felipe, si alcanzamos a ver el video o no. ¿Tú qué crees?
Yo creo, profe, que podemos compartir el enlace en el chat para que las
Vale,
personas lo vean y más bien abrimos un espacio de
listo.
diálogo con ellos.
Bueno, porque eso era como para cerrar, pero es que creo que no lo vamos a alcanzar a ver, pero los invito a que lo vean porque es un testimonio, bueno, allá hay montones de testimonios muy dolorosos, pero que lo veamos porque tiene que ver directamente con nosotros, ¿no? Como maestros, el conflicto y la escuela. Entonces yo deliberadamente no hice conclusiones para saber si tenía preguntas o comentarios, eh, etcétera. Entonces, pues te paso la palabra, Felipe. Muchísimas gracias.
All right. Okay. So thank you so much, Professor Carmen, for such an inspiring, reflection, for bringing up all these topics, issues concerning healing and teaching, and also having hope at the end as we work as educators. And there is a political and ethical commitment as well. I just would like to go through a couple of comments there in the chat box, and we also invite you to leave them there. If you want to open your mic, we have 10 minutes so far, 7, 8 minutes to discuss a little bit. So, Angélica Rojas said, mi total admiración a Elena Guerrero, siempre he leído y referenciado su trabajo, gracias por ese aporte situado desde la educación en las lenguas con una perspectiva de colonial no hegemónica. Gracias. Thank you also, Angélica, for being here. And there is another comment I saw there. I also shared the link if you want to check it out. Najibe Rosado said, thank you, Professor Carmen Helena, very inspiring and necessary work. And there is a question there by Ronald Perdomo, and he said, how can English teachers move beyond the idea of English as a neutral language to embrace their role as critical educators who integrate local identities, cultures, and social realities into their teaching?
Well, I think there are tons of ways to do that. The first thing I would think we need to do is to be convinced that English is not a neutral language, that English is a loaded language, but also pretty much in the way that the subaltern movement in India did is to use the language to express our own reality, our own positioning. And, I think teaching English is the perfect class because you can talk about anything. The English class is about producing language, right? So I think you can bring tons of elements to the class, challenge what is in the books. The books are with these aseptic topics, but then you can challenge these aseptic topics and bring other topics of conversation with your students, allow them to bring their own realities, their own opinions. And I think, for example, translanguaging is a very disruptive um, strategy to challenge that neutrality and that hegemony of English in the classroom. So I think there are tons and tons of examples. English teachers are doing so many wonderful things to challenge that idea and to use English not as an object of study, but as a language to talk about the world, to talk about the community, the issues that students care about. Just remember, for example, Diana Diaz project with, ella le llama la Escuela del Campo, todo un proyecto que hizo con sus estudiantes durante la pandemia, sacando fotos desde lo que podían ver desde su ventana y aprendiendo ella un montón de cosas de los día a día de los niños en el campo. O sea, yo creo que lo importante aquí es como que uno primero se convenza que el inglés no es una lengua neutral y que nuestra tarea no es enseñar gramática ni reglas, ni, por supuesto, hay que enseñarlo sometime, pero que lo más importante sea dar la oportunidad abrir los espacios para hablar de tantos temas. Yo creo que Jimena y Ferney están aquí, ellos han producido un material bellísimo para trabajar el tema del racismo, que nosotros lo tenemos muy tapadito. Jonathan Vázquez también ha hecho unos materiales lindísimos para trabajar. O sea, aquí lo que hay es cosas muy inspiradoras para trabajar en el aula de inglés en los colegios.
Okay, thank you, Professor Carmen. I wondered if there is, any other question or comment. Feel free to, share it with us. Maybe we have some more time. Let's see if there is any member there. Ronald said, "Thank you for this space. I really enjoy and reflect about my wounds as a future teacher and how can I heal them." Okay, thank you, Ronald, for being here and for sharing. And well, I just would like to know your insights, Professor Carmen, on the work and the educational process of pre-service teachers. Because at times I feel that these discussions arrive late in one way or another. So we are arriving, if that's a possibility, late to the realization time. I would like to call it like that, in which we say, okay, there is a strong bond, there is a strong connection to the realities, to the history of Colombia, to what we can do while we are being, pre-service teachers. So is there any idea concerning that particular topic?
Well, I think it all depends on when you're starting your undergraduate program and with whom. Because I know that there are many teacher educators that in the undergraduate program are challenging in so many ways the hegemonic agendas, the canon and this idea that the English teacher needs to speak like a native speaker and that's the only concern. I think that there are many teachers. Veo aquí a Edguita Lucero en La Salle, tú mismo, Felipe, en la Javeriana, en La Salle también está Jackie, o sea, hay un montón de gente en la UPTC que está haciendo muchas cosas y claro, todos no estamos on the same side of the boat, right? I mean, some of us believe in these agendas, but some others don't. So I don't think there is a one size fits all recipe, but I think what gives me hope is that today we are way more people on this idea and on these practices that 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ago. And I think that is very important. Many students from Universidad Distrital with think differently, student teachers will do things differently. Jimena has this semillero de justicia social y creo que eso hace unas grandes diferencias. Ferney está en la pedagógica también impulsando estos procesos. O sea, creo que estamos haciendo cosas interesantes, ¿no? Como que no todos, pero como digo, hoy somos más que hace unos años. And that's a great thing.
Okay, thank you. I do agree with you, as Eduardo Galano probably pointed out. We are little fueguitos
See,
writing, and maybe at times we just need to be closer to continue doing
this,
our job.
see.
And thank you so much, Professor Carmen, for your insightful talk today. This is going to be uploaded also to our YouTube channel so people can share it, spread the word. And well, there is a big round of applause there of all the attendees. So thank you also for being here and supporting our association. And I just would like to close it with a gentle reminder. So let me share my screen with you again. So if you guys would like to have a certificate of attendance to this webinar, so feel free to scan the QR code. You can register there. Remember that we are a organización sin ánimo de lucro, but we also need to survive, and at times it's difficult. So if you want to donate, talk to us. If you have ideas in mind, feel free to contact us as well. And we are going to be there working together and supporting what we do as English teacher or as teachers in general. There is this little new space tool being formed, okay? So we have created this group on WhatsApp. Es un informativo de la asociación. So you can also scan this QR code. We are going to be sharing with you events, interesting information related to our coming event. So feel free to join it, to also share it with people, your students, your colleagues, people at other universities in different countries, and this is open to everyone. And finally, remember to follow us on our social media. Remember, next week we are celebrating our 60th anniversary. So we are going to be in Santa Marta, en la Universidad del Magdalena. Esperamos verlos a todas y a todos en este espacio. Va a ser muy bonito encontrarnos, conocernos y, por supuesto, tener la posibilidad de seguir compartiendo con todos los integrantes de la asociación y con las personas que están participando en este evento. So I think that's all for now. So thank you all. We will see you next week in Santa Marta, Universidad del Magdalena, and there is an interesting webinar which is going to be taking place in October, at the end of October, and we would have a special guest from Hong Kong. So, well, stay tuned, and thank you once again, Professor Carmen, and everybody, thank you for joining us. Have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you so much.